Good midnight. You are listening to Exe Files Paranormal Radio on Phonic FM 106.8 in Exeter and www.phonic.fm online. I'm your host, Alison Rockbrand. Welcome to the show. Hello, Richard.
Hello, and hello, wireless listeners.
Richard Freeman is here with us again in the studio. It's very exciting. He's back from Tasmania, and he's come back to tell us all about his wonderful adventures. So this is a special show dedicated to you, Richard. You have just been listening to The Very Things. This is one of Richard's favorite bands, obscure, so he says. And thank you very much for that, Richard. That was their song, This Is Motown, which we've just been reading was apparently filmed in a strip club, so ooh la la. Richard has some news for us, so take it away, Richard.
Are we ready, clocks? News. Heinrich Himmler's occult books have been discovered. A rare library of books on the occult collected by Nazi SS chief Heinrich Himmler has been discovered in the Czech Republic. The books, a part of a 13,000-strong collection, were found at a depot of the National Library of the Czech Republic near Prague, and they have not been accessed since the 1950s. Norwegian Masonic researcher Bjorn Harreslund told the Norwegian newspaper Verdens Gang that some of the books come from a library of the Norwegian Order of Freemasons in Oslo, seized during the Nazi occupation. In 1935, Himmler founded the H Stonnerkommando, H for hex, the German word for witch, to collate as much material as possible on sorcery, the occult and the supernatural. Himmler thought that the Catholic Church had tried to destroy the German race through witch hunts. The books were stored at Wellensburg Castle in West Germany, the Black Camelot of Nazism, where Himmler created a sort of SS Knights Club modelled on the legends of King Arthur. Historians are to analyse the library, and a Norwegian TV company is to make a documentary about the find. Well, how interesting. Nazi occultists. Elsewhere, pertinent to tonight's show, a Tasmanian wolf has been sighted in Gippsland, which is in Victoria on the mainland of Australia, where they're supposed to have been extinct 2,000 years ago. After Venus Bay Caravan Park owner Tony Holgate saw a thylacine in December, Barry Murphy has reported a sighting at Inverloch last Wednesday. Murphy says, "Last Wednesday around 10:30 I was driving along Ullathorne Road when it crossed the road in front of me. At first I thought it was a fox or a cat, but as it moved off the bitumen," what a great word, bitumen, "onto the green verge, I realised it was dog-sized, about the same size as an Alsatian. It had a long straight tail, strong-looking. The thing that really made me twig was when I drove past it, I saw stripes down its flanks." So, that's the news for today. I did have a third news story, but apparently it was done last week.
It wasn't last week. It was a couple of weeks ago. But right. Yeah, Jonathan beat you to that one.
Yes, the religious chimp.
Yeah, you've got to get more updated on these news stories. 3 weeks, 4 weeks old. It's old news, Richard. Really. We need really up-to-date news. Like happened yesterday. So this Himmler's library, was this recent? When was this? A couple of years ago?
Well, I only just saw it the other day. I stumbled on it and saved it. I thought
it sounds great. I haven't heard this piece of news at all, and it's really exciting. Of course, many people know that the Nazis were into the occult. At Exeter University, there was a Department of Western Esotericism until recently, and the main founder of that, Nicholas Goodrick Clark, was an expert in the occult roots of Nazism, and indeed he wrote a book called The Occult Roots of Nazism, and a very fascinating, very accessible read. If anyone is interested, I would really suggest that. It's a very, very excellent book. He wrote a couple of other books. I think he has one called The Black Sun. I'm not too sure, but he wrote about the Black Sun, one of the concepts that the Nazis were into. Not only them, other people as well. But yeah, no, that's interesting. So
they got up to all sorts of stuff. They went off to look for Shangri-La at one point, the Nazis.
Well, I've actually been to their castle in...
I thought you were going to say Shangri-La.
No, no, I've actually been to their castle in Wewelsburg in Paderborn district of Germany, and that's the triangular castle, which they were going to... It was going to become the head of the Third Reich, the head of the New World Order, etc. And in the center of it, well, in the North Tower, which is like the apex of this triangle, they do have a black sun. It's actually green, not black, but dark green. But they have this marble floor in the shape of a black sun with these inverse sig runes, 12 sig runes inverse, and it's a very unusual place. And funnily enough, anyone can go there if anyone's interested. It's a beautiful area. You can also go and visit the Externstein stones. I think they're 13 gigantic stones. But you can also stay in the Wewelsburg Castle because it is now a youth hostel. It is, yeah, it's a youth hostel. You can stay there for like 13 euros a night or whatever. I don't know why everything's 13. It's probably not 13. It's probably like 20 euros a night. Yeah, because they during the era of the denazification of Germany, they decided to turn every Nazi place into something super mundane. Mm-hmm. So they're like, what's more mundane than a youth hostel? And it's a fascinating place to go. It's really, really recommended. They've got good wild boar steaks and stuff around those parts.
They were trying to discover the Spear of Destiny at one point.
Oh yeah.
Well. Yeah. I mean,
totally.
the Spear of Destiny, as in the spear that was supposed to have pierced Christ's side, not the new wave band.
Yeah, not that. But yeah, they were into all sorts, and lots of interesting things to discover there. So Richard, please, while you were gone, we joked a lot about how you were out there eating cans of soup in a tent.
Well, I did that, and most nights we ate them cold as well.
We knew it. See, we knew it. We were like, Richard Freeman isn't here, radio listeners. He's out in Tasmania right at this moment eating a can of soup in a tent right now. So, it probably was true, and I don't know if it was at that exact moment, but certainly around that time. I mean, did you eat it in the morning? Because what is it, 12 hours?
It's we are 11 hours behind Australia.
Right. So did you ever eat them like around noon?
Around noon. By noon, we were long since up and about.
Oh no, I don't. Oh yeah, right.
No, we got up early. We usually get up about 6 or 7.
Well, that's what it's like when you're camping, right? That's all you can bear in the tent, isn't it?
Oh, God, yeah, I loathe camping. It's so uncomfortable and unpleasant, and I have to do it when I'm on these expeditions, but I'd much sooner not.
So just give us the rundown. So start at the beginning.
Right. The thylacine, also known as the Tasmanian wolf or Tasmanian tiger, it's a flesh-eating marsupial, and it resembles a wolf or a dog, but it has tiger-like stripes along its hindquarters and a thick, stiff kangaroo-like tail. Of course, a pouch, but it's a reversed pouch. It faces backwards. It's an example of what we call convergent evolution, where two totally unrelated animals, often on different sides of the world, will evolve to look like each other because they're fulfilling a similar ecological niche. This creature was found throughout New Guinea, Australia and the island of Tasmania. On the mainland it was supposed to have disappeared about 2,000 years ago, possibly through competition with the introduced placental dingo. The thylacine is a much more powerful animal with a much more powerful bite than a dingo, but dingoes live and hunt in packs, making them more efficient hunters, and they breed faster. Although there are still continued reports on the mainland. On Tasmania, it was hunted and snared by the white settlers, and the white settlers did an awful lot of damage in Tasmania. They cut down the giant swamp gums, which were the biggest trees in the world, bigger even than the redwood giants. They wiped out the Tasmanian emu, and they hunted out the Tasmanian aborigines as well. The thylacine, there were bounties put on it both by the government and by private companies mainly farming companies, and they were shot and snared and so forth. The last one, called Benjamin, was supposed to have died in Beaumaris Zoo in 1936, but since then there have been over 4,000 sightings of thylacines. And the thing about Tasmania is it's about the size of Ireland, but the human population is less than 500,000, and they're mainly in Hobart and Launceston. Villages are tiny in Tasmania, towns are tiny. When you get over to the west of Tasmania, the central area and the west, there is masses of wilderness and mountains and forests. So it's been called the healthiest extinct animal you'll ever meet, and its continued existence has even been predicted by a computer program. So this is my second trip over there to try and find and film the creature.
All right. Okay. Mm-hmm. So you get off the plane, and what'd you do then?
I got off the plane. I met my friend Mike, and he'd been out there for a few weeks already, and he's not coming back until April the 7th. He's out there looking not only for the thylacine, but looking into weird earth lights.
Right. So he's alone there now, eating cans of soup by himself.
Yes.
Oh
yes,
boy.
Yes. Yeah. He looks a lot like the actor Sean Pertwee, if you've ever seen him.
Oh, yeah.
John Pertwee's son. He looks a lot like him. Yeah. Well, we really hit the ground running. We went up to the northwest of the island, which is where we went in 2014, and we sighting reports from there. We'd heard and we set up our camera traps there last time, and we got lots of animals. Like
so what are these camera traps? How do those work?
Camera traps, you tie them to a tree or somewhere else, and they sense motion and heat, and when they sense the heat and motion of an animal, they'll take a photograph. So what we generally do is put bait out, and they photograph animals that come by. But we tested them in Britain before. We found that if you only leave them up for a few days, you don't get an awful lot. You have to leave them up for quite a while. And in Britain, we got otters, badgers, deers, foxes, woodpeckers, a woman having a pee in the forest where we put it up.
Ooh, yeah.
But the area we went to last time, which was sort of very fertile, had been burnt out by bushfires. There were I think 28 lightning strikes in a day that lit all these bushfires, and the Australian bush is very resilient, and some of the plants actually need to be burnt in order to germinate, so it will grow back, but at the minute it looks like it's had a visitation from Smaug. So we didn't stay there very long. We moved down to the Central Highlands, and the Central Highlands seems to be a hub for sightings, and we set up camp in the forested hills using roadkill wallabies. We put up these the camera traps, and then we would drive around at night and spotlight and see what we could see. But we also talked to a lot of witnesses. Chief amongst was a guy called Joe Booth. Now, when I first met Joe, he's an old guy in his late 70s. He was fitting a homemade prosthetic hand on, because he'd recently, about a year ago, had his hand blown off in a hunting accident. A friend of his had some loaded guns on the back seat of a car, and one of them went off and blew his hand off. And he'd had an official prosthetic hand, but he didn't really like it, so his friend had made him one out of an old spray can, and he'd got a Victorian knife attached to it, and he got a big hook that he could screw into it as well. Anyway, Joe Booth was a retired forester, and back in 1958 in the town where he lives, I'm not going to give exact locations away, but the small town in central Tasmania where he lived, he was putting away his ute one night, and he saw what he thought was a large dog in the twilight come loping towards him. He thought it was a neighbour's dog, and he tried to shoo it away. It took absolutely no notice and walked past him. So he got into the car, turned the lights on, and saw all the stripes down the creature's back, realised he'd seen a Tasmanian wolf. And a few weeks before, a crop sprayer in the area said he had seen one. But Joe is very interesting because not only has he seen it, his wife has seen one, and his son has seen one as well. His wife saw one in about 1981-82, about 2 miles from where they live, driving along one night, and she said it just walked out into the road in front of the car, didn't seem bothered by the car, had this long, stiff tail, completely unlike a dog. Its gait was completely unlike a dog's, about the size of an Alsatian, grey-brown in colour with these dark stripes around the back, and she had it in view for over 60 seconds. There's nothing else it could be. And most interestingly of all, just last year, his son Greg saw a thylacine. Now, one of the things that Joe's interested in is the old convict roads. A lot of the old roads in Tasmania from the 1830s onwards were built by convicts, and there's something called the Dawson Road, a very old convict road that he's rediscovered. He and a friend has rediscovered this old road, and they're trying to repair it and record it. And he showed me a lot of old strange carvings in the trees, and also in a big rock, something like a he thinks it's a Masonic carving done by a convict called Nehemiah Jones. And to be honest, it looks phallic to me. It looks like genitive members, to be honest. He thinks it's some sort of a Masonic symbol. But anyway, what happened was he was off down one of these roads whilst his son was on the main road, the main logging road that goes through this area of forest and mountains. And his son shouted to him that there was a strange animal on the road, and he couldn't identify it. And Joe thinks him going into the tree line had frightened this animal out onto the road. It wasn't fully grown. It was about the size of a whippet, but his son described it: long, thick tail, stripes on the back, tail held erect, stiff, from the body, not like a dog's. And it turned and looked at him, and then trotted up the road, and he followed it at a distance of no more than about 20 feet. It went back into the bush, came out again, he followed it again, it went back, and apparently it came back, circled but round, and went around their car, and it left a fantastic set of tracks, which were photographed the next day. Now, I've seen the photographs of these tracks, and the photographs are of the forefoot of a thylacine. It has 5 claws, unlike a dog, and a very strange sort of pad that makes a almost V-shaped mark. There's nothing else like it. So we've got a sighting and the prints to back it up, which was really interesting. So we were based ourselves in this area, and there were other witnesses in this area that we talked to as well. There was an old guy, and his name was Tom Morgan. And Tom's 93 now, but he used to work for a hydroelectric company. And in about 1976, him and 3 other people in a car on their way to work one morning saw a thylacine come out again onto the road. Most of the sightings are from cars when the creature comes out onto the road. And he remarked how beautiful the creature was, how wonderful its coat was, how smooth, the lovely stripes on it, and it walked off the road, stopped and turned and looked back at them, and they said they had it in view for about 6 minutes, which is a very long time. And he says there's absolutely nothing else it could have been. His cousin had a sighting 18 months ago of a male and a female crossing the road with 3 half-grown cubs. And there was an even more recent sighting just 6 months ago. People out spotlighting saw one of the creatures by the side of the road and illuminated by their torches. So there are all these sightings in this particular area, and we stayed in this area for quite a while. Things had a go at the carcasses we put out, but unfortunately on the camel traps we just got the Tasmanian devil and another flesh-eating marsupial called the quoll, not the Tasmanian wolf.
So do you film or otherwise record these sightings?
Yes, we film. Not everybody wants to be filmed, but the ones that do, we film the interviews, we film what we're doing as well. We film ourselves, walking along these logging paths, looking for the creature, We feel
great. So
ourselves,
where is this research? I mean, do you put this online or?
Yes, it will be put online eventually when it's all edited together. And of course, I write a report for the Centre for Fortean Zoology's magazine, Animals and Men, and at some point I will be writing a book on the Tasmanian wolf and its continued survival. But that will probably be a couple of years down the line. I want to get a few more expeditions under my belt.
Okay, so a report on this is going to be able to be found at the Centre for Fortean Zoology, you're saying?
Yes, it will be. It will be on our website, and it will also be in the magazine Animals and Men. It's not there yet, but it will be.
Get to it, Richard. Get to it. We're all waiting. It sounds amazing. I'm really keen to see some of the footage of these people being interviewed, and to hear it in their own words, these sightings, and especially seeing something for 6 minutes long. I mean,
it's not a fleeting glimpse.
Yeah, exactly.
No. Another time we went into a library just to catch up on some emails, and got talking to the librarian there, and she said she was, a few years ago, she broke down a few miles outside of the town, and she was walking back in the dark, and she heard something following her. She was having one foot on the verge and one foot on the tarmac so she wouldn't get lost, and she heard something padding along behind her, and she'd turn around and it'd stop, and then she'd go again and it would go again, and then she got frightened and shouted out, and whatever it was ran off into the bush. And then she later read that thylacines would often follow old bushmen. They would follow, track them behind them, to see if they'd left any scraps. And she was convinced this thing was a thylacine. The only thing other thing it could have been would have been a farm dog.
Yeah, but I think if you're in a car and you stop and see something, I think you know the difference between a farm dog and
good Lord,
something totally different that you've never seen before.
And it's very interesting as well. We visited this old shack in the middle of nowhere down this old, very hard to get to. There was a guy called Elias Churchill, who was, in the 1930s, he was the last person who was actually capturing thylacines alive for zoos, because they were sent off to a number of zoos around the world. And he was the person that caught the last ones in the early 1930s to be caught. And we found his old shack and the pen where he used to keep thylacines, which was very interesting. And on the way down, there was down this little path in the wilds here, this little path, there was a strange smell, and it was only there for a while. It lingered for a little while and it went, and the thylacine was supposed to have a very strange, almost hyena-like smell to it. So could it have been a thylacine? I don't know. But along the same stretch of road we found some droppings, and thylacine droppings are very different from the Tasmanian devil. The Tasmanian devil will have chunks of bone in its droppings because it crunches up bones, whereas the thylacine, it killed and ate in a very distinctive way. It would tear a hole in the front of its prey and then eat all the highly vasculated organs, like the heart, the lungs, the liver, anything with a lot of blood in it. Yeah, and it would often,
that's so strange.
Yeah, often take the snout of the animal as well, because that's very, very well vasculated. And the dung of the thylacine, because it had so much blood in it, was very dark. Very
this
dark.
Is really
and
strange. Is this? I mean, I've never heard of a wolf doing that before. Is this? Is this normal?
Well, it's not a wolf at all. It's a marsupial.
Okay,
it's a flesh-eating marsupial that looks like a wolf.
I see what you're saying.
Because it's evolved to do a similar thing. It's like if you got two companies and asked them to make a high-performance car, the cars would probably look alike because they're doing similar things. And this is the same way with evolution. And actually, their dung was very dark and very fudgy, and I found some dung matching this, and it's been sent off at the minute to Copenhagen University to my old friend Lars Thomas. Him and his colleague Tom Gilbert examine this, do DNA tests on it, and see if we have got thylacine dung. It might be from a quoll, which is a cat-like marsupial, but it might be from a Tasmanian wolf as well. So we're waiting with bated breath.
Well, fascinating. Let's listen to a couple more songs requested by Richard Freeman, and then we'll be back in a couple of minutes. So we have Echo and the Bunnymen, The Back of Love, and Joy Division, These Days. Do you want to tell us, just before we listen to them, why these particular songs, Richard?
Whoa, Joy Division! I love the nihilism of it. I love the bleakness of it. It's like if the band Joy Division were a part of the world, they'd be Siberia. I think if I ever visit Siberia, I will have to listen to Joy Division, because I just love their bleakness. And the Bunnymen, Echo and the Bunnymen, together with the Teardrop Explodes, were the two bands that I listened to most in my teens, in my formative years, and I still love them. The Bunnymen are still performing after all these years, and they're fantastic. They've never really gotten the success or the credit they deserve. They've been around since the late 70s, and they're a fantastic band.
So it's music for the formation of a cryptozoologist then.
Yeah.
And we'll have a little listen, and we'll be back in a couple of minutes.
I'm on the chopping block, chopping off my stopping thoughts. Self-doubt and selfism were the cheapest things I ever bought. When you said slow, to win the back of love. When you said slow, to win the back of love. We're taking advantage of, breaking the back of love. We're taking advantage of, breaking the back of love.
Live and local from the heart of Exeter, this is Phonic FM.
Good midnight and welcome back to Exe Files Paranormal Radio on Phonic FM 106.8 in Exeter and www.phonic.fm online. I'm your host, Alison Rockbrand, and I am here with co-host and special guest tonight, Richard Freeman. Hello, Richard.
Hello, and hello, wireless listeners.
You have just been listening to Joy Division These Days and Echo and the Bunnymen. What was that? The Back of Love. And these are songs requested by Richard, who is back from Tasmania and has been telling us all about his amazing trip. So, Richard, do go on. Tell us about, you've set up these traps, these camera traps. You've got eyewitness testimony. And so what happens next?
Well, the type of camera trap I've got at the minute, the old ones we had that we used for years sort of died a natural death, but the type we got at the minute, you can't look at the pictures on them. You have to put them onto a computer.
Oh, okay.
Rather than looking at them in the field. So we put some on at the first lot on a laptop, and we got Tasmanian devils and tiger quolls and other animals tearing at the carcasses about. And then a bit later on, in another area, when we moved to another area, I got an oven-ready chicken and crammed it full of wallaby meat and left it out. And I didn't get to look at these pictures until I came back to England. And the weird thing was that the whole carcass had gone, like something had just picked it up and moved it, rather than being torn apart like it would be by Tasmanian devils and quolls. So we were, getting quite excited. Could this be a Tasmanian wolf? Well, we had a look at it, and there were a load of crows having a go at this thing. There are so many crows in Tasmania, and they must be the fattest, most well-fed crows anywhere in the world, because there is so much roadkill out there. Things like wallabies. Wallabies are the dumbest animals on the road you'll ever see. They'll jump out into the road, jump back, jump out again, run around, go anywhere except out of the way of the car. It's as if they've got a death wish.
It sounds like a pheasant.
Yeah, they are. They're sort of like
pheasants are.
I mean, other things like wombats have got some common sense to them, but and possums as well. Possums just sit there. I think they get dazzled by the lights. Anyway, and then suddenly it's as if the chicken, which was in mid-shot, jumps to the side of the shot and then vanishes completely, but we can't see what's moved it. It was very strange. So we didn't get a Tasmanian wolf on the cameras, but the thing I think we need to do in future is look at getting more cameras and leaving them out for maybe 6 months on end in these certain places to get what comes by. Now there was a guy, my friend Mike has seen these pictures, and he says, well, this is either Photoshop or it's a Tasmanian wolf, and the guy isn't computer savvy enough to do Photoshop. He's from the northeast of the island, and he'd left these cameras out on a remote farm, and he got several pictures of a Tasmanian wolf, and I haven't seen them. Mike has, but he's very cagey about who he shows them to, this guy. And we were going to go up and talk to him, but he's been a bit, he won't show them to anybody else, unfortunately. I'd have dearly liked to have seen them. But another guy we did meet was a guy called Cole Bailey, who's about 80 now, but he's seen 2 thylacines, one on the mainland and one in Tasmania more recently. And he's probably the greatest living thylacine researcher. I mean, there are other guys like Eric Geiler, who researched a thylacine all his life but never saw one, and Ned Terry, who went throughout Australia, Tasmania, and even up into New Guinea and didn't see one, and he's sadly now got dementia. But Cole Bailey was lucky enough to see 2 of them, and he's written 2 very good books on the animal. And I got to talk to him, and I asked him where he thought would be best on the mainland to look for it, because he's seen one on the mainland, and he seems to think that the west of Australia would be the best habitat for them. Another guy we met, a very interesting guy, was an artist, and he was making these beautiful bronze thylacine heads, and he'd carved them in wax first. And when we went to his studio, he was carving this thylacine head out of a huge piece of wax, and it was incredibly detailed. I mean, he's been talking to scientists, so he gets all the features of it exactly right, and then he casts them in bronze, but they cost about $5,000, which is about £2,500. So I'd rather spend that on another expedition. But he is planning to make chocolate thylacine heads, life-size, very, very lifelike chocolate thylacine heads. But I wouldn't be able to bring myself to eat them. And my mate Mike says he's going to buy one, and then cast it in plaster and have it painted instead of paying the £5,000 for a bronze one. But we've sort of made plans for next year as well, because this is an ongoing project. We don't go over there, for a couple of weeks and then leave it. It's like the Orang Pendek in Sumatra. I've been back there now for five times, and got more evidence every time I've been. And we intend to do this with the thylacine as well. We've sort of looked at an area now in the southwest of the island, which is very promising because it's so remote. There are no roads going into it even. You'd have to be taken there either by helicopter or go round by boat and go up one of the rivers. And this artist guy had been there 20 odd years ago, and remarked on how incredibly remote the place was. So undisturbed, we'd have to take all our supplies in one big lump and have a base camp and go out from there. But whether we can afford to do that or not is another matter. But you've got to realise you can't just, unless you're phenomenally lucky, you can't just walk out there and find one of these things straight away. When the BBC went out to try and find snow leopards in the early 70s, it took them something like 6 years.
Yeah,
They had people in there for months and months and months on end in the Himalayas looking. We go for 2 weeks once a year.
But when you set up these camera traps, are you setting them up close to where you're camping, or are they further away?
No, you're usually a fair way away,
so
they won't be disturbed.
But even so, I think when people like the BBC go out there to film animals and film things like the snow leopard, and if anyone has never seen some footage of the snow leopard, it's quite extraordinary footage. It's quite an extraordinary creature, and it even now is rare to catch it. And of course, people go out and spend weeks and months in a hide waiting for this thing to show up. So, and they are in a hide. They are hiding away. They are making as little of their presence known as possible. So I don't really know how you could find or film a creature without that kind of thing. I mean, even if you are setting up the camera traps, it isn't the presence of your tent, like anywhere close by, gonna freak it out, or
Oh, quite possibly, but we do put the traps of good ways away from the campsite. Right. But another thing we do, we have these things called crash cams now, which are little cameras that sit on your dashboard, and they film constantly, and they're used mainly for legal matters. If there's been a car accident, people have these things on all the time while they're driving, so if anything happens, they've got a recording of it.
That's
so
right.
We drive around at night with one of these things on all of the time, and I think that's probably the way it's going to get caught. Somebody, probably not a scientist, it's probably just a member of the public, he's just going to film one of these things when it runs across the road with one of these cameras. Now, Joe, that we mentioned before, Joe Booth, he's now obsessed with finding the creature and proving it exists, and that's pretty good because he's a resident in Tasmania. He's there all the time, and he's retired, so he can go out whenever he likes. So he's in it for the long run, and he's in an area that there was a hell of a lot of sightings, and his idea was to take cages out with cockerels in them or chickens in them, with food and water for the chicken, and just leave it there for about a week with camera traps, and then come back and see what's on there, and keep doing that in different areas. So you've got live bait to attract the creature.
Yeah, it sounds like a very good plan. I do think that you would need cameras for quite a long time in order to catch something like that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Like 2 weeks,
It's not enough. And also, you got to remember, we move them around in that 2 weeks. We move to different areas as well. So, and camera traps are appallingly expensive, good ones. I mean, if I had enough, I'd just have them put up down there for like 6 months at a time and go back and check them after 6 months.
They'd have to be in quite protected boxes and stuff like that, I think.
Oh yeah, the boxes are waterproof. Yeah, they're tough old things, but the Centre for Fortean Zoology used to have about 5 of them. One got nicked in Britain when we were setting up for big cats, and the others just came naturally to the end of their lives. They only last so long, these things.
Yeah, well, I'm just thinking there was a project recently where they were trying to film the ice caps melting in the Arctic, and they set up a series of cameras in order to film it, and it took them quite a long time to develop these cameras and to develop a box that went around them that would protect the camera. I mean, obviously it's the Arctic, but they didn't want to set them up and then go back a year later and then the cameras failed, you know. So I think that's definitely an issue. If you set up a camera and then you set up 4 cameras and then 6 months later, like 2 of them are, have stopped working or whatever, I think that would be pretty bad. I think you'd have to have maybe better cameras than you have, or probably generally just pretty good cameras that could definitely run for that length of time and not be damaged.
Yeah, in Britain we've left them up for a couple of months. Okay. And they've been fine. But in something like this, and we'd like to do it in Sumatra as well, you'd be looking at least 6 months. Yeah. For things to be up there. But it's always the same. It always comes back to money. It always comes back to funding at the end of the day.
There's also something, Jackie Tonks, when she was on the programme, and I know she's a friend of yours, Richard, and another fellow cryptozoologist, she was talking about, I'm not sure if it was on the programme or in some other conversation that I had with her, but she was talking about some cameras which are drones.
Oh yes, yeah.
No, that was at the conference that she went to in USA, and she was talking about these cameras on drones which can be flown around, and they can land quite close to the ground, and they can sort of go through the forest and then go back up onto the sky, and I mean that seems quite interesting.
That they do, but I visualise taking one of those things out there, switching it on, it going up and smashing straight into a tree or something.
Well, no, apparently they're very sensitive, and they can come and fly right next to you, and they know that there's a person there or that there's something there, and so they don't fly into things. Yeah, but they wouldn't be able to see through a forest canopy, so unless the creature was crossing a logging road or something, or come out into a clearing, you'd have to be very lucky with them. And I dare say they're hideously expensive. Well, that's probably true. So just briefly, just before we go, we've got about 10 minutes left. Can you just take us through kind of your day? Like, you wake up and then, like, what do you do? What's a day like on a cryptozoological expedition?
It depends on where you are and what you're doing, but generally you wake up, or you've been lying awake all night because it's so bloody uncomfortable. Get up, wash.
Okay, you don't have to tell us all the details.
From a stream or something, and then generally have a quick breakfast of carryable food, and then you're off for the day, and you have to utilise, because you've only got 2 weeks or so, you have to utilise all the hours in that day to the best you can. So, like, if you're in the jungles of Sumatra, I'll be up trekking through the jungle all day until it, dusk, and then it's back to camp. With Tasmania, it's slightly different. You get up, and then you might go and interview a witness if it had been lined up, and then you spend the day doing field work. You'd be walking these tracks or driving from place to place, setting up the camera traps, putting out the bait, walking through the forest, walking along the logging roads, and then when it starts to get dark, then you go out in the car with with the camera running, and see if anything crosses the road. And there's loads of wildlife out there: Tasmanian devils, tiger quolls, eastern quolls, pademelons, Bennett's wallabies, echidnas, which are monotremes, egg-laying mammals that have spines and eat ants and termites. Duck-billed platypus. The first time ever I saw duck-billed platypus, which were wonderful. Just passing by a lake and I saw one. We stopped the car and got out, and I got to within 6 feet of a duck-billed platypus, which I've never seen before, which is wonderful. And of course we moved around the island a lot. We didn't stay in one place. We were up in the north originally, then we were down to the Central Highlands, and then we went as far as almost to the northern part of the southwest of the island. So every expedition is different. Generally, when you're in the tropics with native guides, it's mostly trekking on foot all day long. But here in Tasmania there are roads, and if you've got a decent car you can go sort of off-road into the logging trails and stuff. So a lot of the time you're in a car, except when you're walking down the very remote, very narrow and rocky areas. In Mongolia, when we were looking for the Mongolian deathworm, we were in old ex-Soviet army vans that have been converted into minibuses, because the distances in Mongolia are so vast. You drive from place to place, and then you set up camp at an oasis and explore from there. So it's different in different areas, depending on the terrain and what roads they've got and other factors.
It sounds great. It sounds like a great adventure. It really does.
Yes, it's. I just wish I could afford to do it more often and longer. And I've been trying to interest television in this for years. I've been banging my head against the wall trying to get television interested, and they never are. They never are. They never bite for these things. And it would make a wonderful series. Even if you don't find your target creatures, you're going to places most people have never seen. In Mongolia, I was the first Westerner to go to some of these very remote oases. In Thailand, when I was in Thailand looking for huge snakes, I explored a cave that no Westerner had ever been down before. It would make for wonderful television. But
well, they have shows like the River Monsters show.
The River Monsters is a great show.
It's a really good show.
Yeah, I'd like something modelled very similar on that, very science based.
It's very similar to what you're saying. He interviews local eyewitnesses.
And what a great name for a fisherman, Jeremy Wade.
That's true.
Yeah, I'd like something like that, not something like Finding Bigfoot, which is just the way they just stand in the woods and shout and never see anything.
I think because he does actually catch the creatures, that maybe makes it a little bit different. I think maybe people are worried that a show where you're just looking for something constantly but never actually catching it might be a little bit too frustrating for people. I don't know, and or the costs involved.
And it takes time. You can't just stroll out there. Unless you're exceptionally lucky. My mate Dave Archer, first day in Sumatra, first day in the jungle, sees orang pendek.
Wow. Well, yeah, not everyone's lucky like that. And I was kind of thinking, in a way, it reminds me a little bit, what you're saying reminds me a little bit of ghost hunting shows. And like, let's go into this old place and let's take some psychics and see if we could find a ghost. But I don't think that costs nearly as much as what you're describing.
No.
So I think there's a cost level there involved, and you can always pretend that you found a ghost. Which is, I think, what they do in a lot of these shows, the ones that I've seen, not that I'm 100% skeptical or that I'm a skeptic 100%, but I definitely have seen a couple of these shows and been like, oh, seriously, this is overacting, people. This is overacting. From the viewpoint of an actor, I take some offense. But I don't know. It would be certainly a very, very interesting program, I think. Maybe one day they will go for it. So you should definitely keep at them.
Yeah, fingers crossed. I do the odd bit of one-off bits of television here and there. A couple of years ago, I made a documentary for French television on the orang pendek, and the guy Christopher Killian that I did that with wants to make a series, but he just can't get anybody to bite at the minute.
So some of this research, the current research that Richard has been talking about, that is the Tasmanian wolf and Richard's current journey to Tasmania, images and Richard's report and so on, other stuff, and other expeditions. A lot of this can be found at the website for the Centre for Fortean Zoology, which is www.cfz.org.uk. That's www.cfz.org.uk, Centre for Fortean Zoology. Lots of interesting stuff on that website, so check that out. And Richard also said he was going to be writing a book about the expedition, and don't know when that's going to come out, Richard. Or
it's not for a while yet. I want to get a few more expeditions under my belt. So.
Yeah, okay. So
I wrote the Orang Pendek book after about 4 expeditions.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Something similar.
So
yeah,
sort of
it'll be another couple of years.
Compendium of expeditions.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that sounds good. Until that time, do check out the Centre for Fortean Zoology. Lots of interesting stuff on there. You can also check out our Facebook page for the Exe Files. It is called Exe Files Paranormal Radio.
That's
106.
EXE.
That's EXE. Yeah, that's EXE Files Paranormal Radio on Phonic FM 106.8, and that is, of course, named after the town where the show is broadcast from, which is Exeter, on the River Exe, and so it is a fun little pun. You do check us out on Facebook and like us, please. We want to be liked, and share us. We love to be shared, and listen again next week. Until then, we are going to have a little listen to some Megadeth, my choice, A Secret Place, which reminds me of some of Richard's strange adventures in secret places. Until next week, good midnight.
Good night, wireless listeners.